In this video I have some back to school inspired practice tips. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Brian from Airflow Music. Alongside publishing our books for brass players, we're producing a bunch of videos with tips to make brass playing easier for you. So if you're new here, please subscribe to the Airflow Music channel so you're notified of all of our videos. At this time of year, it's back to school time. Now the tips in this video are about practicing, and I'm really kind of geared towards those of you who are in school someplace, probably in a college program, or if you're in high school, taking lessons with a private teacher as well. We all know that we're supposed to practice. After all, repeating something allows us to develop the skill. There's a few things about practicing that people don't tend to think about, particularly as they get embroiled into a college or school program, perhaps for the first time. So I wanted to talk a little about daily routines and some overall general practice tips to get more value for your practice time. Now, it's very common when we come to a college level program or something like that we have a teacher now who prescribes us a daily routine. Set of exercises, usually from a bunch of different method books, and it usually takes something like 90 minutes or 2 hours to practice every day. Now, the first thing I should say about this is a tremendous thing. I have no argument with that at all, and I think it's really important that you practice it. But also realise what the other reasoning behind it is. Now that you're in college, the idea is, particularly if you're a performance major, is to develop the skills you'll need to play as a professional afterwards, and even during your college experience. Now, a large part of that is being able to deal with the rigours of playing a gig. That may mean that you go and pick something up, you have to sight read it down on the day, you may have a rehearsal beforehand, and that can make for a very long day's playing. So if you're not prepared to be able to play for several hours, then that can really be a challenging thing. So a big part of the daily routine is to kind of prepare you as if you have a gig every day, even though you may not. Not only works on your fundamentals, but it gains you a certain amount of face time, which ultimately is what you need to get to grips with playing your instrument. You just need to do it a lot. Now, it's important to mention this because what happens very often is that I see a lot of people after college or even during college who come to me for lessons and they struggle with endurance and things like that, and to my mind they're not approaching their daily routine properly, and they're also handcuffed to it. They've come to the conclusion that this stuff that's been prescribed to them is not only something they have to do every day, but it's something they have to do every day before they play anything else. Effectively, they treat it as their warm-up. Now, if you're doing that, I think you've missed the boat. I think your warm-up should be something separate from that, and your teacher may prescribe you a warm-up, but it's important to differentiate between what is warming up and what is doing maintenance practice, that is maintaining things that you've already learned how to play, and then, stuff that is new to you, or when you're dealing with repertoire, or when you're practicing other technical things outside of what has been prescribed, because that's important to do too. It's not just about playing your daily routine. Then that's when practicing comes in. And so I think it's important to differentiate between those three and also plan your time accordingly. Now, if you do have a daily routine, then there's a couple of things you should note, particularly if you're going into it new. The first thing is you should pay attention to when you get tired while you're practicing it. If you've got kind of hour and a half or 2 hours of stuff to get through, then very often what we tend to do, since it's the daily thing and we have to do it every day, is we tend to kind of plough through it and not really pay attention properly. Particularly when you're starting out, note the point at which you start to feel a bit tired. It's important to take a break at that point. You don't build up your chops by practicing to exhaustion. You build up your chops by stretching past where you're completely comfortable a little and then resting and coming back to it fresh. Doing that will get you along much quicker, even though you may not play for a great deal of time to begin with, particularly if something at the start of your routine is challenging for you. Now, this comes to the second point about routine, is that even though it may contain the same stuff, to my mind it shouldn't be practiced in the same order every day. Vary the order, keep it a little bit fresh. Try different orders and see what feels good to you, and see which exercises complement each other and work together, so you can get to a point where you know what you can rely on to make your chops feel good. Like I say, I have my warm-up down to a science. I know what I need to do to get going, and I can make suggestions for everybody else. But until you've spent some time with it, then you don't really know how that feels for you. So those are two important things. If you've got, say, 20 exercises to play, and you plough through and you get tired after number 6, and you don't vary the order, you're always going to get tired after number 6. It becomes as much a part of the habit of doing the routine as anything else. And what can happen then is that tiredness becomes part of your muscle memory, and you'll find that if you play something when you're out playing music later on, even though your chops feel nice and fresh, if you hit a technique which is covered by that number 6 exercise out of 20, where you usually get tired, you will feel tired when you're playing. It's a strange thing, but it's part of how muscle memory works. It's a part of that kinesthetic response. We talked a little about this before in the video K for kinesthesia. So yeah, do practice your daily routine. You know, your teacher knows what you need to deal with. You know, they will adapt it as the semester goes by, and you have to hit certain benchmarks to get graded on your course. Now the other thing within this, if you're supposed to get something up to a certain tempo, don't try and rush too quickly into it, particularly if it's unfamiliar. Let's say one of the prescribed things is to play Clark number 3 at 120 beats a minute. Without looking at it right now, I can't even tell if that would be fast or slow. But let's say that's the thing, and that's a challenge for you. Now don't be tempted, just because of what you hear down the hall in other adjacent practice rooms from your fellow students, to try and rush too quickly into that and try and go real fast and get there really quick. You'll get much more benefit if you do practice slowly and get smooth at it and then start to speed up. Let's say you've got to make that benchmark after 2 weeks. The temptation is going to be to get as close as you can to it and then keep moving from there. I say if you go slow and really get connected to how the air flows from note to note across the arc of a whole phrase, then when you start to speed it up, you'll be able to go much more smoothly and be more coordinated. So it's just some different things to think about. The last thing I wanted to say about practicing is to very much remember the micro and macro of it. The micro is all the small components. The macro is the bigger picture, the big stuff. Your goals might be micro or macro. You might have a test in a month where you have to play a certain number of exercises or scales or something like that at a certain tempo and be graded on that. Okay, those are micro goals. Those are something you have to work towards in the short term, which will inform and help you with working on other technical things, but you still have to look at the macro, at the bigger picture, what you're trying to achieve in the end. Getting overall technique and musicianship up to a level where you can potentially work as a professional musician. So keep both of these things in mind. Keep an eye on your short-term goals. They're important, and they can be great to break down the process, but also keep your eye on the macro goals as well. The last thing is we do have this tremendous opportunity now with technology. I mean, things as simple as me being able to record videos like this for you every week. When I was young, this wouldn't have been possible. I wouldn't have had the technology to do it, nor would I have had the platform to be able to present it to a wider audience. And a big part of why we have this is this device that we all carry around in our pocket, the mobile phone, the smartphone. Now, some long-term advice about practicing, which has been great advice as far as I'm concerned, is that in order to pay proper attention to detail and in order to get a proper sense of how you sound from in front of the horn, it can be very important to record yourself and make sure that what you think is happening from your side is how it sounds on the other side as well. So now we all have the opportunity to do this because most of us have a smartphone, and so that has the facility to either video us or to audio record us. There's native apps on most things to do that, or there's additional third-party apps you can get for, you know, different functions. That's neither here nor there, but the fact is we have the technology to do that. You should use it. I know it's very tempting with your cell phone to think that any media recording we do is to be shared, and you can do that by all means. If you're particularly digging on something that you've played in the practice room and you want to share it with your friends so they can see what you've been up to, that's great. But at the same time, you can also use that as a reference and recording device. So you can have those things to check out and say, okay, I think this went pretty well. Let me check it out, record it, see that it's going as well as I think it is. Because then you can make different notes when you're not worrying about the notes that you're looking at on the page. It's a very important thing to do and something that I think is overlooked. Okay, so I hope you found this helpful. This was a bit of a off-the-cuff video today, so I hope it worked out and it was helpful. I'm going to be back on Monday with another exercise of the week, and I'm here every Friday with more trumpet pro tips. In the meantime, please visit airflowmusic.com and check out the various books, exercises, and the merchandise we have on offer. All sales directly support making these videos. I'll see you next time. Now, go practice.